All right, everybody. So without further ado, we're going to start this evening's session. My name is Jennifer Zach, and I work in the advancement department at the Trail Conference. And I know every single person here knows, but today we turned 100. So, right? That's pretty incredible. Not a lot of organizations can say that, but I'm proud to be part of one that can. Although it's not the Centennial celebration that we had planned, we embrace the moment and we celebrate differently. To mark this milestone, over the course of the past week, we held a series of virtual engagement pieces and our first ever trail-a-thon, 100 miles for 100 years, celebrating each year of service we've provided to the region. I know some of you are taking the challenge yourself, so thank you. And for those of you who aren't, you'll have an opportunity to support with our thank you note. I'll provide a link to that. So as the pandemic hit, the Trail Conference found itself in a very unique position, with many flocking to the trails to find solstice. And since the outbreak began, our website has seen a significant uptick in traffic. Over the last 100 years, trails have proven to be an essential outlet for many. And this past year is a true testament to just how essential trails are for individuals' recovery as we wade through this pandemic together. So from our very modest beginnings in 1920, the Trail Conference is now the leading organization sought out for their expertise on sustainable trail building and maintenance, invasive species identification and management, just to name a few. Tonight we'll hear all about it from our Executive Director, Joshua Howard, who will share our successes from this year, even in the midst of a pandemic, and our vision for the next 100. So if you have questions, please chat them below, and we're going to hold all the questions until the end. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Josh.
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. I appreciate you taking your time. So I want to get started. And as I look at the clock and calendar, like Jennifer said, we're almost exactly 100 years from the historic gathering that took place atop the Abercrombie and Fitch building, where Major Welch's proposal to a group of tramping clubs was accepted and the Trail Conference was formed. I'm not exactly sure at what time the meeting took place, but I think we're pretty close to it. So right now we are sitting on top of the actual 100th year celebration of the Trail Conference. Like Jennifer said, this was certainly not the Centennial celebration that anyone had envisioned. But in a year when everything has been topsy-turvy, we have managed to turn 2020 into a huge success. Instead of closing our doors and shutting down, the Trail Conference pushed itself to be innovators and really make a positive impact for the trail community. One of our biggest successes this year has been the creation of an online digital engagement platform. With no prior training or experience, we jumped right into the webinar world, and with our kids serving as cameramen, we became experts. Over the last 6 months, we've had more than 10,000 participants sign up for live and pre-recorded webinars on everything from trail maintenance to how to identify invasive species to the history of the Morris Canal. Our staff and volunteers have embraced this new opportunity and done an amazing job. And the results are incredible. From early April through June, while our volunteer activities were suspended, we had 123 new volunteers assigned and placed into new roles. We had 68 evasive surveyors and 55 trail maintainers and corridor monitors trained and assigned, with more people receiving their field assignments each week thereafter. It is the highest rate of volunteer recruitment and assignment that I've seen in the last 20 years at the Trail Conference, and possibly ever. And our successes were not all just virtual. In New Jersey, working with our partners, we were able to help hikers with real on-the-ground solutions. In Wawayanda State Park, we installed a floating walkway to help address the consistently wet and swampy crossing at Terrace Pond. This project exemplified the Trail Conference's ability to bring like-minded supporters of trails together for creative solutions. With the help of a passionate philanthropist who trusted us with his support, and the volunteers of our West Jersey Trail Crew, led by David Day and Monica, we got permission from the New Jersey DEP to install this unique solution. And as I'm sharing all these stories, we're going to be sharing links over in the chat with opportunities for you to read more about these projects and see some of the solutions that we've created. We'll also share these with everybody at the end in a follow-up email. Our successes this year have even earned national attention. In a recent webinar hosted by American Trails, a national nonprofit working on behalf of all trail interests, we hosted a session on managing high-use trails, why trail stewards are a necessity in creating safe, sustainable trails. 814 individuals across North America attended to learn about our Trail Steward program, which has been educating people at some of the most popular trailheads in the nation. In fact, more than a dozen organizational leaders have gotten in touch with us since our presentation for more information on successfully managing Trail Steward programs and have recognized us as a force in become champions of the outdoors. In our hearts, we will always be trail builders. When a handful of passionate hikers decided to build the first public trails across New York Harriman State Park in 1920, they didn't just blaze a path for their own recreation. They kicked off the beginnings of a trail revolution. We built Harriman's trails, and now it's time to restore them. The trail builders on our Conservation Corps have begun repairing and rebuilding sections of the Ramapo-Dunderberg Trail, the first trail we built in Harriman. The volunteers on the Long Distance Trails crew are busy working on the Long Path, building new sections of trail to replace the roadwalks as we continue to complete Raymond Torrey's Long Brown Path all the way to the high peaks. Looking to our second century, we will provide the public and our partners with the necessary expertise to defend our trails from threats such as the spread of destructive invasive species and ecological degradation due to high use. Our partner view the Trail Conference as leaders in promoting leave no trace principles, protecting fragile ecosystems from damage, restoring and protecting native species, monitoring and minimizing the ecological impacts from recreational use, and using science and data to influence policymakers. And why does this all matter? Because in the New York metropolitan area, it is the most densely populated region in the country. With nearly 20 people in the tri-state area, local trail destinations are being overwhelmed with traffic. For many, nature and trails have become essential for their survival. Parks and trails have seen unprecedented visitation. New hikers and those with miles and miles of experience depended on the work that 100 years of volunteerism has provided, a network of trails that would be there when we all needed them the most. Without making a headline or an afternoon briefing, the work of generations of Trail Conference staff and volunteers quietly provided the masses of people the elixir of sanity, serenity, and exercise we all needed to survive these difficult times. And as we return to a functioning as a normal society, I hope that this newfound affinity for nature continues. I hope that the public's love affair with trails continues and becomes a part of our new normal. To remain a sustainable organization that will last another 100 years, we will continue to rely on the help of those passionate individuals who continue to support the Trail Conference, which comes in many different forms. For some, like Walter Ilczek Jr., it's maintained the Kakiak Trail for the past 40 years, a commitment to 1 mile of the outdoors to ensure it's ready to receive whoever may find it. For others, this year it's been becoming one of our founding members of our giving circles, those who donate at the highest levels, who make extraordinary commitments to our organization, allowing us to provide access to thousands of miles of trail for our communities. For a century, the Trail Conference has worked to ensure that the public has access to trails and protecting the lands they traverse from threats. While our techniques and approaches to building trails and land protection have changed, the most important ingredient to our success has always been the individuals who have followed their passion and become a part of this great organization. Today, we celebrate all of the passionate trail builders, conservationists, botanists, writers, map makers, volunteers, and trail lovers who have been connecting people with nature since 1920. We also celebrate all of our current volunteers and leaders. Each of them is building upon the legacy of our first 100 years and will make the Trail Conference more impactful in its second century of service. They are the leaders and visionaries who have been handed the torch of leadership from Major Welch, Raymond Torrey, Leo Rothschild, and those hallowed names from our history as we write the next chapters. And I'm very excited to be a part of that team and help to move the Trail Conference into its second century. So I want to thank everybody for attending tonight and take a chance to field some questions from everybody, if there are any. Yes, so Walt and Jane just posted that there was a second American Trails webinar on how to maintain trails in parks with volunteers. That was led by Jane Daniels. Jane, you want to wave at everybody? We can provide that link as well.
There were almost 600 people who signed up for that. And American Trail says most of the people who sign up, about half of them attend and half of them watch it later. And needless to say, I pulled upon my experience with the Trail Conference and got one comment back as, boy, you really know how to manage volunteers.
Any other questions? Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight.
I have a question, Josh.
Yes,
please.
sir, Phil.
So can you comment on crowd management? It seems like that a lot of the parks, the parking lots are always full in areas where you used to be able to park along the side of the road that's no longer permitted. Can you comment on that and how this might be addressed?
Sure. So we've seen unprecedented visitation to our parks. And one of the challenges is that our parks were not designed to handle the volume of vehicles that are coming. The trails actually are holding up fairly well. We have seen some erosion. We have seen some impact from the high use. But the trails themselves are handling the increased volume better than expected. The challenge is safety. The challenge is our park partners can't move the cars out fast enough because the roads and the lots were not designed for this volume of users. So a lot of our partners are looking at how can they move people. It's a people, movement issue. And they're looking at using underutilized areas. There's been a lot of talk about shuttle services, but the challenge is resources to pay for that. Where are we going to find the money to provide that type of support for the public? One thing that we at the Trail Conference have been thinking about is we know where all the buses and all the public transportation take people. We also know where all the trailheads and where all the trails are. And there are some spots that we know where a bus or a train stop, but there is no current access to trails. So Peter Dolan, our trail program manager, has been looking to figure out, is there a way to increase usage using mass transit? Is there a way that we can help people get to trails without having to use a car that will relieve that burden? It won't change the number of people coming out to the trails, but it will solve one of the big challenges, which is the illegal parking on the side of the road. I know in the Catskills, the state of New York is looking to put together a high use advisory group. And they had something similar up in the High Peaks earlier in 2019. And my understanding is sometime in the next week or so, there should be an announcement of this group. And that group will be charged with looking at the full spectrum of use in the Catskills, not just in one or two small areas, but the entire forest preserve. So what we're hoping is from that exercise, we can get some ideas, share some concepts that have been working in other places, and try to work with our park partners to avoid the idea of having permits and requiring people to apply to use our parks. We want to keep the parks open, keep trails accessible for everyone to use, and not have it be on a permit basis. So we think that there are some solutions that are available. I think there might be some creative ways to get funding for those type of solutions. We've seen things like the Island Explorer that's sponsored by LL Bean and Acadia National Park work very well. And we've got some partners that have some really good ideas on what they might be able to deploy on the properties that they manage.
Thanks.
I have an idea. I don't know how you introduced yourself into the group. Am I speaking now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Anthony Wayne, exit 17 on the Palisades Parkway, there's 2 parking lots, and they accommodate roughly 1,000 parking spots. Right now, they have a COVID testing center in the north parking lot, and they're barring access to the lower parking lot and almost to that whole area. If they could somehow allow us to still use the lower parking lot, that could be hundreds and hundreds of parking spots. Make us, West Mountain and that whole area available. I don't know, is anybody trying to get the, I don't know who controls the COVID testing centers or anything like that, but there's never been more than 10 cars there as far as I know. And yet we're blocking thousands of people from hiking in a great area of the park.
Yeah, the access to that lot is being controlled by the governor's office through the pandemic, and until things, I think, change with how the state is addressing that, my understanding is that PIPC is going to continue to collaborate with state health officials and have their their property available for the state to use. We do recognize that Anthony Wayne is an underutilized resource by the park, and that is something that is being looked at, how to repurpose those properties, how to reuse those, and what can we do to take advantage of such a large facility that hasn't been used as a pool in several years, as well as an underutilized access point for the rest of the park. So it is something that the new executive director of PIPC is aware of, and I think he's looking at how to reinvigorate that particular piece of his property.
So you're saying that if we wanted to really try to move the needle on this, then it's really the governor's office that we would need to reach. It really has nothing to do with, necessarily our relationship with the Parks Department?
Yeah, it's not a decision that's coming down from the lower levels.
Thank you.
Josh, another question for you, if you can. I'm not meaning to put you on the spot, so I don't know if you have any of this information available. I was just curious if you could speak a little bit about the crews that do dedicated projects. I think it was the AmeriCorps crews, and the general trend of the use of that type of crew, like 2019, 2020, and visions for 2021. I'm not sure whether that's off subject or you could just maybe speak about that a little bit.
Of course. So the Trail Conference uses a variety of approaches to provide support to all of our trails. And historically, when we first started, we were an all volunteer organization, and all of our work was done by volunteers. But over the years, as the environment that we've worked in has changed, as the demand for Trail Conferences services has increased, we've looked at all possible ways to provide support to our agency partners and the public. So over the last, I believe it's 7 years, we've been looking at deploying as many individuals who can respond to the demands on the ground as possible. We continue to support our volunteer trail builders. Like I said earlier, our West Jersey trail crew has been out really busy building floating piers, working on the Appalachian Trail. Our long distance trail crew has continued to repair the Appalachian Trail as well as the long trail, the long path.
Yes.
But we have been given an opportunity to try a new approach to repairing trails. And what we have found is that our volunteer crews have the ability more often than not to go out on the weekends. They are able to recruit individuals to come with them. But when we looked at an opportunity to deploy a greater number of individuals to make a service commitment to the Trail Conference, we came up with the idea of hosting AmeriCorps crews. And AmeriCorps members make a service commitment to the Trail Conference. Our model has them using a 900-hour service commitment, which is generally about 6 months of service. And during those 6 months, we have our AmeriCorps crews, which are sponsored through contracts with New York State. working on different trail projects, both in the Taconic region. So right now they're working on the Washburn Trail east of the Hudson River. And we also have a crew in Harriman State Park working on the Ramapo-Dunderberg Trail. And then a third trail building crew that is in Sterling Forest working on trails in Sterling Forest. As for the approach of how long we're going to be using these crews, we're seeing a high demand for trail repair, the construction of trails for trail master plans that have been put in place for by park managers. We've got a contract with New York State that affords us the opportunity to recruit and support these crews over the next 3 years. And we would most likely reapply for that funding in future years to continue having these particular service members on the ground. What we're finding is we're able to recruit additional volunteers. We're able to give those individuals dedicated to making a service commitment to the organization an opportunity to not only learn the hard skills of trail building and construction, but also volunteer management, project management, ecological stewardship, leave no trace training, so that we can help to prepare the next generation of leaders to take the charge up to protect our open spaces and the trails that we all love. So right now in 2021, we're planning on having 50 AmeriCorps members give a service commitment to the Trail Conference. Of those 50, I believe 8 of them will be doing ecological stewardship. Another 22, I believe, are going to be doing outreach and education at popular trailheads and destinations throughout the lower Hudson Valley and the Catskills. And then we will have, 20? So and then another 20 doing trail building.
Josh, I have a question. I do invasive plant surveys, and especially with the, I just blanked out on the trail. I can't remember the name of the trail all of a sudden. Anyway, I am coming across large numbers of people who just brush right by you with no mask on. I had one particularly aggressive gentleman on what's the trail that goes from Georgia to Maine?
The Appalachian Trail.
Thank you, the Appalachian Trail, who just literally pushed me out of the way when I said, oh, well, just a second, let me put my mask on, because I had it down, no one was around. And I, asked him to please wait a second while I pulled my mask up, and he just pushed me aside and said, oh, F that. That's ridiculous. I don't know how to approach these people. I want to be safe. I want to do the surveying, but any suggestions on how to deal with that?
Well, that is a difficult situation, and I think first and foremost, your safety and your comfort level is the most important thing. So if you're finding that is a challenge, I'd recommend possibly looking to go out in a different time of the day, maybe earlier in the morning when there's less people out, or maybe not on a weekend. I know our park partners are working on trying to keep signage up at trailheads, reminding people about social distancing and wearing their masks. I've been on several hikes where it's been a mixed bag, where some people do wear their mask and others take them off, but they are very courteous and try to keep that 6 feet of separation. One thing you might want to do is make sure you're wearing bright colors so people can see you and identify you. If you have a Trail Conference t-shirt, maybe put that on top of your other layers so that you can be identified that you're working on the trail, and hopefully people will respect you and give you the space and the courtesy that you deserve. If not, one thing you can do is you can let us know where this is happening, and we can just give that information to our park partners. I'm not sure what they're able to do. They can just ensure that there is signage at trailheads, and that if there is any signage that's missing, hopefully we can work with them to see if we can have something posted.
Okay. Yeah, this particular part of the Appalachian Trail, there is no signs anywhere. You can barely find the entrance to the trail. So that would be a great idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else?
What section of the AT are you talking about?
What?
Adrian, which section of the AT are you talking about? I'm a supervisor from Bear Mountain Bridge to 301. So I know the signs are up there.
This is over on Dual Hollow Road in almost near the Connecticut border.
Okay, I'll check it out. I know who is there. I'll check with them, see what's going on.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? No. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I appreciate your time. I hope you can all hear me because I have a couple of frozen screens and I'm not sure if it's my screen or yours. But thank you for coming. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being a part of the Trail Conference. I look forward to everything that we're going to do over the next 100 years together.